Running Raiden has been quite stale for the past couple of months. I think her best team, ever since Dendro came out, has always been Raiden, along with someone like Nahida to proc Hyperbloom. You'd run like double Hydro to get as many Bloom procs as possible. So this is like the standard Raiden layout. She would be built full EM. So this would mean Dragon's Bane and like 4-piece Gilded Dreams. And I find that build quite boring. Because, I mean, she's just gonna be a replacement for Kuki, which, to be fair, she does more damage. But it's just not as fun, because you don't actually get to use, like, 90% of her kit, which is being an on-field DPS, right? So, I'd like to present to you a new team that I've been cooking up. I learned about this team from Jeff, and I found this team to be actually very good. Now, a majority of the team's DPS output still relies on Hyperbloom damage. I actually realized that Raiden does a significant amount of damage on field when buffed by Furina's burst. So this team could be classified more as a Quickbloom team now rather than just a Hyper Carry or a Hyperbloom team. Furina actually works really well because normally Hyperbloom does not benefit from Furina's buff. But when factoring in Raiden's personal damage output, Furina's buff becomes a lot more significant. If you're running Furina, I highly suggest you run this team over the standard Hyperbloom team, just because it feels a lot better to play. Raiden is also a character that can generally battery the entire team, because most of the characters in this team are very burst reliant. The ability for Raiden to battery them is also very useful for being on field, and so that you can get away with running a lot less ER. Likewise, most of the characters here, I feel Baisu is not someone that you can't really replace in this team. Now, among everyone in this team, I find that Nahida is actually the character that's most replaceable with Kale, because Nahida can't heal, and healing is pretty much essential in this team to get the most out of Furina's buff. So, if you aren't healing with Baitsu, there's really no point in running this team, because Furina won't actually be generally a good option. Now, instead of Furina, you could actually run Yelan, because Yelan's buff doesn't make Raiden's on-field damage any more significant, and kind of just wastes the whole point of Raiden being on-field. And it would have been generally better if you just run Raiden on full EM. So the reason why I'd rather run this team over something like National is because National, while generally being an amazing team for her, tends to have the major weakness where you just knock back enemies due to overload. Once you're not able to hit all the enemies on the field, your damage kind of just falls off, like drastically. And so that's why I really just don't prefer running National on AoE content. But for content where it's single target and the enemies can't be knocked back, it's pretty comparable. It's roughly the same. But now you're just choosing which slots of supports you want to sacrifice. So do you want to sacrifice Chincho, Bennett for Raiden? Or you could sacrifice Baitsu, Nahida, and Furina for Raiden. Now, this team does take up a lot of like really strong supports. So that's also a major downside of this team. But again, if you really need Nahida for AoE content, you could generally run Pole for decent results. Okay, so I can showcase to you on this boss. Hopefully I just don't get one-shotted.
Seems like an emergency. Time to oblivion.
Yeah. I'm like dealing so much damage to an enemy that has around 2 million HP. Oh, no, please don't die. And the great thing about this team is that you can get your burst up pretty fast after the end of Raiden's rotation. There. It's really, really, really good. So in this team, Raiden actually has a hybrid build. So she still runs 4-piece Gilded Dreams because of the EM buff, but you also would benefit from the attack percent buff provided by this set. Instead of running Dragon's Bane, you can actually run the catch for increased personal damage, because Furina does actually make Raiden's personal damage a lot better. And for some stats, you generally want, but I actually do prefer an EM main stat over an attack stat. Still, a majority of the damage being done by this team is through Hyperblooms. But she also benefits from running EM when running her in an Aggravate team. So it actually buffs both your Hyperbloom damage and your personal damage with Aggravate. So for Baitsu, you'd want to run Instructors just to buff the entire team. Now you won't be healing as much, but if you have a really good Baitsu build, it shouldn't be a big problem, and your healing would genuinely still be enough. Also for Baitsu's weapon, you could actually run Thrilling Tales. Because the ER requirements aren't that high, you can actually get away with running Thrilling Tales just to buff Raiden's damage. For Furina, you'd want to run the key if you have it, because the EM buff this key provides, it can go up to 120 to 160 depending on how much HP your Furina has. For my testing, you'd actually want to run an ER Sands, because you actually do still need to burst on time. And it's gonna be really annoying when you switch back to Furina and your burst is not up. For Nahida or your second Dendro character, you genuinely want to run like, the Gilded Dream set just to buff your damage. I'm running the Koradak Amber just to get more heals. Oh yeah, it's also important to note that my Nahida's C2, and I suggest that you could test if only Genshin would allow me to turn off Constellation so I can see how well this team would run under C0. But still, this C2 is not necessary for this team to run properly. So yeah, I can actually go and test this team right now. Wait, let's try with Traveler this time. Oh, I actually quite like that. That was actually pretty good. I actually kind of like that. That was good. Okay, my final testing of this. Okay, I like that. That was good. That was good. That was pretty good. I like it. Okay, I like Dendro Trap a lot more than Volley now. Okay, I'm gonna test the viability of the free-to-play thing. I'm my internet. Alright, that's actually not pretty. That's not that bad. That's actually pretty good. So yeah, that's the team. As you can see from my showcases, it is extremely effective in both sides of Abyss, and I've been really enjoying it over running the standard national team. But even the F2P options, I chose DMC over Kali because of her longer Dendro application, and their performance is roughly 10 to 20 seconds behind Nahida in AoE scenarios, which kind of performs similarly in single target. But yeah, that's all for the vid, and let me know if you guys have any team suggestions in the comments below. See ya!